Welcome to another Charter Communications local edition. Al Travis with Representative Kim Norton. This is going to be exciting. I'm very happy with this because you decided not to run this time.
You're happy that I decided
not to
that
run. Really didn't sound good, did it? No, excited that you'll come talk to us. You were the representative for 25B for 10 years.
I was.
I mean, this isn't just I got in, didn't like it, I got out. You were there for 10 years, and you decided not to. Will you tell us why?
Sure. I became worn by the partisan bickering, to be honest. And I love policy work. I'm a policy wonk. I like digging in, writing bills, working them out, compromising. And the longer I was there, the less ability there was to really compromise on bills. The partisanship has just become so extreme on either side that people didn't really want to work on making a bill better. They just didn't want to hear a bill, or they didn't want to talk about an issue. And that got really frustrating. And after 10 years, I was tired of it.
See, and I talked to a lot of politicians, and you have to be a certain type of person to want to go into that fight every day, all the time, because it's got to be frustrating to say, I've got a thing that this could really help the world, Rochester, and it just isn't going to get heard. So this is why it's so interesting, and I'm glad you're on with us, because you have an insight that I don't think anyone else is going to be able to give us. That election night, you're still into politics. You stayed up and watched the election.
I watched it.
Yeah. So as you watch that seunfold, and in Minnesota, they go from Democrat to Republican, especially in the Senate, and now there's two legs of that stool. Sure. What was your thought when you watched that on election night? Were you shocked?
Yeah, I was surprised and a bit dismayed. And it started actually 2 years ago when I saw the legislature put together a really good rural package. And yet the rhetoric during campaign time was that the legislature was horrible to rural Minnesota. And so we started seeing that pattern develop, and it continued, not just in Minnesota, but nationwide, that trying to divide the parties by urban versus rural, and that was the messaging. And in fact, that isn't true. The representation certainly after the post-election, does represent the communities where the Democratic Party is more city, but the policy making was not that focused. It's the rhetoric in the campaign. And so to see that really grab a hold in a national election was a bit surprising to me, yeah.
Yeah, but now because you're unleashed with the idea that you don't have to hang with these folks every day, the end of last session, at the end of the session, we think up at 5 minutes to midnight, the bills are going to get signed and the bonding is going to get done, and then it doesn't. And that is, everybody's beating each other over the head on why it didn't. Why did that not happen? Why did the bonding not get done, in your opinion?
I think what happened at the end of session was something that had continued on the whole year, which is bills weren't being vetted well in committee. They were being changed behind the scenes, and rather than having a transportation bill that was passed, that everybody heard and had input on, and a bonding bill that was heard that everybody had input on, they were thrown together in a way to try to force a decision at the end of session. Frankly, with a bill that I hadn't read, many of us hadn't even seen, and to be asked to vote on something that big for the state of Minnesota with no time to read and comprehend and understand and question just was unheard of. Usually the bills you've heard through committee, and they may come last minute, but you know what's in them. This one we didn't know what was in.
I sense your frustration. So now I want you to look ahead, because you got out of the idea that you got out gives me the ability to ask you this. So what really happens this next session then? Things change. Republicans are going to be here. You still got the Democratic governor. Now we have the bonding bill to get done, and we also have the budget to get done, which is each on their own selves have stopped the government. What could possibly get done?
Well, I mean, there are a couple positions that people could take. They could be really pragmatic and say, we want to look like we can lead, and so we're only going to propose something that's the governor will sign. And so they can go through the motions and only put bills forward that seem reasonable, that will get signed at the end, and then at the end they can say, look what great,
things we did, sure.
Look what great things we did. Or they can push an agenda that's very partisan, and then have the big fight at the end. I think that's happened so many times recently that I think the public's going to not be satisfied with that any longer.
Well, the public may not be, but come on, Representative Norton, they haven't had the power, the ability to do this for some time.
But they don't want to walk away with nothing at the end either. They need to have wins. And so
So what are the odds? You give me 50-50?
Oh, I'm not good with odds. I'm not going to bet. But I think they have some choices to make, and my hope is that we can return to government that actually we put a policy forward, we discuss that policy, we make changes so that the policy at the end is supported by both parties. That would be what's ideal.
All right. So you are still the representative as we tape today. What is it that Minnesota needs to get done, in your opinion? You're not going to be there making the fight, but what is it you think they should do in the next session?
Well, I think we need to take a real tough look at education and apprenticeships, internships, moving our students through the process successfully so that they can get into the workforce sooner. We're hearing a lot from employees across the state that they need an educated and trained workforce, and they need it sooner rather than later. So I think that should be a focus. So I'm hopeful they'll do that. And of course, every year we have the fight over how many taxes are we going to give back, and are we going to have a good bonding bill? And I think those are always
and that's the fight we have every time we get together. But what about can you just get me in Rochester when you're out there? I mean, I have no doubt up until this point people still come to you to talk to you about politics in Rochester. What is it that Rochester needs to get done in the next 2 years? I mean, here's a community growing by leaps and bounds, the DMC and the money coming in for that. What is it Rochester's biggest issue for the next biennium?
I'm not sure the issues in Rochester are really legislative, to be honest. I think there are some things. There's some economic development and workforce legislation that could support our community, but we've been given the gift of DMC. We have to have that roll out successfully, and a lot of that is not now in the hands of the legislature. It's in the hands of the DMC Corporation Board and the City Council, and I think that's where the struggle is going to be for this community. How do we make a community that supports the Mayo Clinic and its growth, but that frankly is good for the citizens that live here and meets their needs too? And I think there's a real struggle there that the city's going to have to.
All right. And now, as we're running out of time, what happens to Representative Kim Norton?
Well,
what do we see with you?
I'm enrolled full-time in graduate school right now. I just am taking finals and doing my final projects this week, and I'll have a 15-hour graduate class
graduating
next
as
semester.
a what?
I'll have a master's at the MPA program in public affairs in leadership, policy, and research, and I'm focusing on energy and nonprofit management.
So like every other college grad then, you're putting out there, you're looking for work, and you're going to have a resume ready? Is that what we're looking at?
I already have a resume ready, but hopefully my resume will be a little more robust than it has been in the past.
Well, thank you very much for being on the program. Representative Kim Norton on Charter Communications Local Edition with Al Travis.